Good evening and a very warm welcome to your English news package with radio and television Tonga for the hour. Making headlines, Internal Affairs Minister's request to stay approved by the Supreme Court. Office of the Legislative Assembly isn't prepared to commence Parliament deliberations as legal proceedings are yet to be completed. And the Tonga Hungaha'pai eruption, the largest eruption in history. Now for the stories in details. The application of the People's Representative of Tongatapu 7, Siale Salallahs, to stay the court's ruling against him until his appeal case was granted this morning at the Supreme Court. This was confirmed by Salallahs' legal counsel William Clive Edwards Sr. to radio and television Tonga News this afternoon. The granting of Salallahs' application will be effective until the appeal ruling later in the year. Edwards is also Dr. Pohivatu Onetoa's legal counsel, in which his application for stay was already submitted. However, a hearing is yet to be confirmed. Meanwhile, Sifatu Tafaiva, the legal counsel of Tongatapu 6 People's Representative Poasi Mataeletei, said that his client's application was submitted yesterday and the hearing will be heard this Thursday. Salallahs joins Finance Minister Tatafu Tom Moyaki as the second MP to have their application to stay approved by the Supreme Court after their election in November 2021 was deemed void when they were found guilty of bribery. The Office of the Legislative Assembly isn't prepared to commence Parliament deliberations as legal proceedings are yet to be completed. This was announced by the Speaker of Parliament, Lord Fafanua, during a press conference yesterday evening.
Lord Fafanua says the deferral of Parliament yesterday was because they are awaiting a written judgment of the Lord Chief Justice's decision to accept the Minister of Finance, Tatafu Moyaki's application to stay in his role. This comes after Moyaki and 3 other members of Parliament, 2 of which are cabinet ministers, as well, were found guilty for bribery and had their elections deemed void. Lord Fafanua said that the most important issue is the budget, as that is the first agenda of the Legislative Assembly in Parliament. He added the first deferral of the Parliament on Monday the 16th of this month was because the budget's estimate wasn't completed until yesterday, but it was again deferred because of the ruling made in the Supreme Court regarding the Finance Minister's application to stay. He says they received the judgment verbally from the Lord Chief Justice, but it wasn't in writing, and they are awaiting for the written judgment to confirm how the continuous basis of the Parliament will proceed. Meanwhile, Chief Clerk of Parliament Gloria Boleo says this was the first time in Parliament's history for a member in Parliament to be convicted by the Supreme Court, then have his or her application to stay approved. Boleo adds Parliament holds the power to unseat members. The unseating it was not because of the ruling from the Supreme Court, but because of the law. When a member is convicted in court, the role of the Parliament is to unseat the convicted member of Parliament. Lord Fafanua says the budget's estimate is very important to their agenda, and if it isn't tabled by the 1st of June, then they will have less time to review it. Reporting for radio and television Tonga News, I'm Ali Situbo.
The Lord Speaker of Parliament, Lord Fafanua, confirmed a review to the salaries of the members and staff of the Legislative Assembly under certain conditions. This comes after Parliament approved for the salary raise 4 years ago. However, no government funded it since 2018. During a press conference yesterday, Lord Fafanua explained that the Parliament decision was made after an independent report was conducted in 2018 by Dr. Isake Valueke, who was not a member in Parliament at the time. The Office of the Legislative Assembly cannot just raise its members' wages without its staff who manage the operation of the office. This comes after Parliament approved for the salary raise 4 years ago, but no government funded it since 2018. The Parliament approved the salary raise after Tongatapu 5 People's Representative and former Finance Minister Dr. Isake Valueke reviewed the remuneration of the members and workers of Parliament and concluded that they needed a raise based on their job description. Now the current government approves to fund the salary raise. Meanwhile, the Chief Clerk of the Legislative Assembly of Tonga, Gloria Paula, said the last review of the office salary was in 2009, where government CEOs have higher salaries than people's representatives. As the Chief Clerk of the Legislative Assembly of Tonga, I am aware that our office, together with the town offices, are the only civil servants who are not scaled through salary bands similar to the government. However, this review was tabled through Parliament through consideration of the Remuneration Authority after being found that CEOs have higher salaries than people's representatives, which is really low compared to other Pacific Islands Parliament. Therefore, I believe that this review will align the public service salary band to enable increment of the staff compared to their performance. During the press conference, journalists questioned whether this means that the salary level for the government will increase, including that salary of cabinet ministers. But Lord Fafanua replied that this increase equals the salary level of government, and only members without a cabinet portfolio will see a raise in salary and not cabinet ministers and the Prime Minister, as their salary is already in level with the government standard. Dr. Isaac Evalueke was tasked with conducting this independent review due to his expertise in finance as well as being a former member of Parliament at the time. New Zealand volcano scientist Professor Shane Cronin from the University of Auckland confirmed in a press conference this afternoon that the Tonga Hunga Ha'apai was the biggest eruption and has the deepest volcano in history. Mark Ake with more on that story.
In a press conference of the Ministry of Land and Natural Resources, Lord Tuiafitu said that this is the first ever survey on the volcano completed since the eruption, which also studied how high the eruption and ash plume went and how it caused the tsunami waves. Lord Tuiafitu said that the tsunami reached a height of 18 meters that ravaged Tonga's western side, while waves reached up to 20 meters in Nomukeiki Ha'apai.
On the evening of the 15th January 2022, the world witnessed an unprecedented natural phenomena ascending from the small ocean island of the Kingdom of Tonga. The Hunga submarine volcano erupted, sending ash and gravel of Hunga Tonga and Hunga Ha'apai Islands up to 58 kilometers into heavens and spreading up to 700 kilometers across the ocean kingdom. The phenomena generated tsunami up to 18 meters high at the west coast of Kanokopolo village and up to 20 meters high at Nomukeiki Island, the frontiers of Ha'apai group from the north. These are the largest tsunami generated by any volcanic eruption in the modern era.
A volcano scientist from the University of Auckland, Professor Cronin Shane, said the eruption was felt in all corners of the world and triggered tsunamis in Japan, Korea, and South America. The survey was conducted within the 2 months following the disaster.
Tonga's new police commissioner took his police officer's oath and signed his employment contract with the government of Tonga in a private ceremony at Tonga Police Headquarters. The oath was administered by the Chief Magistrate Folaulokotui. Commissioner Shane McLennan arrived in Tonga with his wife Sharon on the 11th of May, and after being released from quarantine last Thursday, he was immediately sworn into office and presented his credentials to the Prime Minister and Minister for Police, the Honourable Huakavame Liku. Commissioner McLennan is the first Australian to hold the office of Commissioner in the Kingdom. In a statement, McLennan said it is an absolute honour and privilege to serve as the new Police Commissioner and will not take the role lightly. Students from economically affected families are more likely to continue their education through funding from the World Bank SET project after they dispersed 962,250 pa'anga to the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Approximately 4,000 high school students benefit from this program, not only Tongatapu but also the outer islands. Mark Ake again with the details.
The aim of this program is to help students in Tonga complete their studies, especially those from economically affected families. The said project manager, Lilieta Takau, told Radio and Television Tonga News that there is a total of 3,849 secondary student beneficiaries, with 1,996 studying in Tongatapu, 839 in Vava'u, 495 in Ha'apai, 365 in Eua, and 154 students in Niuafo'ou and Tongatapu. Takau said the main aim is to ensure no one is left behind in education due to financial hardship. During the disbursement yesterday, the CEO of the ministry, Dr. Fotufisiahi, urged beneficiaries' parents, guardians, and students to make the most out of this opportunity to ensure that students attending school are well supported to succeed in their educational goals. Although the ministry and said project had scheduled Term 1 payments to be made in February, but the impact of the volcanic eruption and COVID-19 on education in the last 4 months prevented this from happening. In response to the natural disasters and COVID-19, the number of beneficiaries has increased this year from 3,777 in Term 4 and from 2021 to 3,849 this term. The World Bank said project continues to support Tonga's most vulnerable families by paying for children's school fees during these tough times.
And as the world begins to deal with the outbreak of the monkeypox virus, the Ministry of Health stresses that the public must continue to be cautious with the current COVID-19 restrictions to prevent other diseases from reaching the country. Alice Tupo with the details.
The first outbreak of the COVID-19 in Tonga was in February this year, and the Health Ministry put more efforts on imposing the COVID-19 restrictions, and many people comply with the restrictions. Tonga has been ongoing with recorded new cases every day, and up to date, according to the data from the Ministry of Health, saw the decrease of new cases of COVID-19 daily. Meanwhile, the Health Director, Dr. Siale Salallahs, concerns that COVID-19 has not yet cleared from Tonga, and the public should always prepare for other diseases that might reach our shores, especially with the new virus that is now recorded in various countries around the world, monkeypox. Dr. Salallahs adds if Tonga would not comply with the restriction from the Ministry of Health, another virus might be able to reach our shores through the passengers returned from abroad. Meanwhile, Tonga is still in the orange light of COVID-19 restrictions. Reporting for Radio and Television Tonga News, I'm Alice Tupo.
That wraps up from local scene with Tonga Development Bank.
Tonga Development Bank does not charge you levy for using its currency exchange or DD services.
Sport is up next with Mark Ake, brought to you through the kind sponsorship of Pacific Timber and Hardware.
Welcome to this evening's sports package in the local sports scene and to netball. Her Majesty Queen Anaspau's charity has reached a netball Tonga. The Queen's charity has helped many people as the country continues to heal from the January 15th devastation and the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. These factors have halted many sporting activities, including Tonga Netball's local competitions. However, the organization has received netball gear and equipment to help with their recovery, thanks to the Queen's charity. The CEO of Tonga Netball, Salallahs talked more about this assistance and how involved the Queen has been with the charity's distribution.
Her Majesty Queen Anaspau has ongoing charity ever since after the crisis that happened January 15th. And that is charity through donations of containers through her charity from New Zealand, Australia, and also the United States and Hawaii. And netball has been fortunate to be one of the receivers, but one of the things that I would like to acknowledge Her Majesty and her donations is that the donations really are going out to those who would benefit most from it, if I could use those words. For example, like the netball gears, you know, it's not just coming and going to, you know, dishing out to any village or anything, but Her Majesty is very present in terms of receiving the donations and charity through her, and her together with her staff are very hands-on in terms of stock taking and keeping records and dishing out all these donations.
Back in March, Tonga was crowned champions of the Pacific Oz Series after beating Fiji 60 points to 52 in the final in Australia, and Sisfa believes that this victory helped the country with their recovery from the January 15th devastation and other challenges.
The win for Tonga came at a very crucial time for our country. The games, as you know, it happened during a week of hard lockdown here in Tonga. Everybody was locked into television watching our team, and I think it really did lift spirits, not only of the sport but our people during that time, and it's something that we needed. It unified us during a time of crisis, and also during a time of a lot of political unsteadiness. It's like we kind of like put that away for a week while we unified under Tonga. So it was a good thing. At the same time, it has lifted netball and the profile of netball. And I think the hardest part is trying to sustain it. And that is what we from Tonga Netball are working hard to keep at.
She added that there is a squad that the national head coach has recalled to a one-week training in Sydney to be held the next month. From there, she will pick her squad for the Oceania qualifiers in Fiji in July. Although Tonga Netball's competitions are still on hold due to COVID restrictions, their offices are still operational, and they are currently conducting in-house training on capacity building as well as online training for their staff and officials.
And that concludes tonight's English news package, but before we part, here's one final look at today's top stories. Internal Affairs Minister's request to stay approved by the Supreme Court. Office of the Legislative Assembly isn't prepared to commence parliamentary operations as legal proceedings are yet to be completed. And the Tonga Hungahapai eruption, the largest in history. And that's it for tonight. Thank you for your company. I'm Paula. Have a blessed evening.